So how we work is firstly through investigation. If you had a complaint to file with CARD or with the Civil Rights Division, you could do that online and we would look into it. We also enforce laws. We influence policy. While we at the office ourselves are not attorneys, we do have the power to influence. And finally, through prevention, through trainings, we can ensure the public is aware of their rights and can act on any violations. And we have four offices in Massachusetts. We have in Boston, New Bedford, Springfield, and also Worcester or Worcester. And finally, just a quick disclaimer. We, as presenters on this call, we are not attorneys and the office cannot represent. However, we would be happy to refer anyone to an attorney afterwards if that was what they want. And with that, I'll pass it on to Jillian, who is with the card division.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jillian, and I'm a consumer specialist on the utilities team in CARD. And I will start us off by talking about why so many consumers have switched to solar in recent years. Essentially, with the rising need for clean energy, solar power is becoming more and more important because installing solar energy systems offers a practical way for consumers to reduce environmental impact while utilizing renewable energy. Also, solar energy plays a key role in lowering carbon emissions and therefore, in the long term, promoting a more sustainable future. And with this growing demand, it is very important that consumers stay educated on what exactly solar is and how it works, which is the purpose of our presentation today. So now I will hand it off to my colleague Melissa to talk about how solar energy systems work.
Thank you, Jillian. Good morning. My name is Melissa Armstrong. I'm a supervising consumer specialist in the Consumer Advocacy Response Division. Today, I'm going to walk you through the core components of a solar energy system and how they work together to harness the power of the sun. Massachusetts has been at the forefront of renewable energy, and understanding solar systems will give you a clearer picture of how you can tap into this clean, renewable energy source. Let's start with solar panels. Solar panels are the heart of any solar energy system. These panels are made up of solar cells that capture sunlight and convert it into direct current, commonly referred to as DC electricity. Essentially, they're like the ears of the system, listening to the sunlight and transforming it into electricity. These panels are typically mounted on rooftops or in large ground installations, especially in areas like rural Massachusetts, where there's more open land. So whether it's your home roof or a large solar farm, solar panels are the first step in harnessing the sun's energy. Now, once the panels capture sunlight and convert it into DC electricity, there's a little problem. The electricity produced by solar panels is in DC, but the electricity we use in our homes is alternating current, commonly referred to as AC. This is where inverters come into play. Inverters are like translators. They convert the DC electricity into AC electricity so that it can power your appliances, lights, and everything else in your home. Think of inverters as the system's gateway to making solar energy usable in everyday life. Now, let's talk about batteries. What happens if you're producing more solar energy than you need during the day? That's where batteries come in. Any excess energy that isn't immediately used can be stored into batteries for later use. So think of the battery as an energy bank. During sunny days, when your panels are producing more energy than you're using, the energy gets stored away in that battery. Then at night or on a cloudy day, when the panels aren't working at full capacity, you can draw on that stored energy. This ensures that you always have power when you need it. Then, even if the sun isn't shining. There are a few other important parts that keep everything running smoothly. The charge controllers. These regulate the battery charging to make sure it doesn't overcharge, protecting the battery's lifespan. Mounting systems. These are the structures that hold the panels in place, ensuring that they are the optimal angle to capture the sunlight. Then there's wiring. The wires connect all the components of the system, ensuring proper energy flow between the solar panels, inverters, batteries, and the rest of your home's electrical system. So, in summary, solar energy system work by capturing sunlight through solar panels, converting it to usable electricity with inverters, storing excess energy in batteries, and using various other components to ensure the system operates efficiently. So now let's take a look at the installation process. This is a crucial part of the journey when setting up your solar system. There are the main steps solar companies go through to ensure everything is done efficiently and correctly. The first step is the initial consultation. So this is where the solar company comes to your site, assesses your space, and figure out the ideal system size for your energy needs. They also take into factors like your energy consumption patterns and the specifics of your roof or property, so they can customize the system accordingly. Emu, I would go back a slide, please. Thank you. Next, we move on to design and permitting. Based on the initial assessment, solar companies will design a solar system tailored to your needs. Once the design is finalized, they handle all the necessary paperwork and apply for permits. This ensures everything compiles with local regulations and building codes. And step 3 is the installation phase. Solar companies will come out to your property and begin setting up the panels and inverters. They also involves all the electrical connections and integrate in the system with your home energy's grid. They make sure everything is installed to the highest safety standards. Finally, in the inspection and activation phase, local authorities will inspect the system to ensure it meets all regulations. Once everything's passed, the solar company will activate the system and set up monitoring. You'll be able to track your energy production and see the results in real time. Now that I've discussed the benefits and the overall impact, I'm going to let my colleague Talita discuss the cost and financing. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Melissa. Can everybody hear me? Melissa was talking about the 4 initial steps, and I would say this is the 5th step, which is the payment. Whenever installed the solar panels, there are costs and costs with financing if you are financing the panels, and we will discuss some options that we have right here. Whenever you're installing solar panels or you're going solar, as we say, you have to consider upfront costs. There are costs related to installation, equipment, labor, permitting, as Melissa said, and usually you have to clarify who will bear those costs and how they will be spread out. If you were doing a lease, if you're doing a loan, they might be diluted inside of the loan, or with the lease, it might be in a different way. It's always good to check the agreement and to have a through conversation with the seller representative to see how you will, who will bear the cost and how that will happen. In Massachusetts, thankfully, we have many incentives, tax credits, rebates, net metering, and those are related to renewable energy incentives. So if you're thinking about going solar, a great option is to check with your tax accountant or with your tax advisor and see if you are eligible for those tax incentives. And if you are, it's a really great option for you to offset the cost of the solar panels. As I was saying, there are a few options for the payment or for the way you are going with solar. One of them is the loan. With loan, you can spread out the cost of the agreement over time. And there's another option, which is a lease or a power purchase agreement, also known as a PPA. For leases and PPAs, you will be allowed to pay based on the system performance. So often there will be no upfront costs, and those are designed to make your transition to solar energy more smooth. Also, another thing to take in consideration when we are talking about costs and financing is the long-term savings. Whenever you're installing a system like that, you are thinking and you are planning to save on the long run. So it is a great option to save throughout the decades, because Usually the panels will be on your roof, or the contracts will be there for 25 or 30 years. So always take a look and see if in the long term, it's a decision that makes sense for you, for your family, and usually the cost that you will spend in the beginning of the transaction, you have also to see if that will pay off throughout the decades that the panels will be on your roof. Next slide, please. Yeah, also another thing, after you install the panels, after you make the transaction, and now you already know all the details and the ins and outs of the agreement, it's also good to understand how it's going to be the maintenance and the life of the panels. Usually when the solar panels are installed and they are a lease or a PPA, the maintenance is going to be a responsibility of the seller. So whenever you have a problem with the panels, or whenever you have a problem with the I'm sorry, guys, with something related to maintenance, you have to contact the installer, and they will be taking care of that. One thing to keep in mind is that we live in a cold state. Massachusetts, we have a lot of snow. So usually we have leaves that fall down in close to the fall. So it's always good to check and take a look on the panels, see if they are not covered by snow all the time or with leaves, because that could impact the generation of electricity. So regular cleanings. There's also good to check the inverters. When we are talking about panels, the solar panels, their lifespan is usually 25 to 30 years. But the inverters, they have a lifespan of 10 or 15 years. So it is usual that in the middle of the contract, you have to take a look on that and see if they need a change. And for that, if you were in a lease, you would have to contact the installer. If you're in a financing, in a loan, you will have to check what the contract says and who's the responsibility to change that. Also, another thing is that the solar panels, usually they have warranty and something called warranty of the performance, guarantee in performance. There are two different things. So whenever the solar panels are being installed, you can check on your agreement if they have warranty for the installation. So whenever they make holes on your roof, the company make holes on your roof, if they have warranty on the installation and later you have a leak, you might get the leak fixed by the company and you don't have to spend out of pocket. Also, whenever the solar panels are installed, there's something that there are a percentage that they promise you that the solar panels will generate. Let's say they say it will generate 90% of what we are promising you. If it generates less than that, there's something called guarantee warranty, and you might get credits back because the panels were generating less than they should. That is also in contract. Next slide, please. As we are talking about the cost, I think it's also good to talk about the benefits, and especially for residential owners. Whenever we are thinking about solar, as I said, it is a decision that you have to think, and it's not like you don't have to think lightly about that, because after a house or a car, it is a long contract. It is one of the longest contracts that you probably will be signing in life. So whenever you think about that, we are talking about benefits regarding your electricity bill. So one thing to think about is it lowering my bill? Do I really think that this is lowering my bill, and will I get benefits monthly when I sign for the panels? Usually you will get credits on your electricity bills, and that depends on the size of the system, on where they are installed. So it's always good to think about that when you considering panels. Also, another good thing for homeowners, if you own the panels, whenever you own the panels, the home value might increase. So whenever you were appraising the house, if you're thinking about selling it after a few years and you already own the panels, the house might be appraised with the value of the solar panels. It will be considered a home improvement in the house. This doesn't happen when you have a lease because the lease, the equipment is not yours. So for homeowners, it's always really good to think that that's a selling point. Usually when they go to your house, they say it will increase the price. But leases are different from loans. So always keep that in mind. And also the third point, if we can come back, the third point is, as I said, in Massachusetts, we have plenty incentives, tax rebates. So it is a state that incentivizes green energy. So whenever you're thinking about solar, taking a look with your accountant and tax advisor, talking to other people who already signed up and seeing what are the benefits that they already got from the solar. And also, there was any federal state benefits that they were able to be eligible for. And talking to your accountant, you will be able to see if you are also eligible for that. Some states are not eligible for, but Massachusetts is still. So it's a great way to get a benefit from the solar installation. And lastly, it's a sustainable energy solution. So if you are someone who are concerned about the planet, if you are someone who cares about it and want to go from fossil fuel source to something green, to a green energy, it is one of the best resource for green energy. You will be able to generate your own electricity and also help the planet while doing that. My next slide, I think I will pass to Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you, Talita. Solar farms. These large ground-mounted solar installations are helping to transform the way we generate and consume energy. So what exactly are solar farms? These are expensive solar power plants, often spread over acres of land, designed to generate large amounts of electricity. Unlike rooftop solar systems, which are usually smaller and for individual homes, solar farms are massive installations that feed energy directly into the electrical grid. This helps supply power to thousands or even millions of homes and businesses. Solar farms are often situated in rural areas where there's ample space and high solar exposure. These regions are perfect because they receive more sunlight, making them ideal for harnessing solar energy efficiency. Additionally, these locations tend to have lower population density, reducing the need to displace communities or disrupt local activities. Now let's talk about the key benefits of solar farms. Solar farms generate large quantity of clean, renewable energy. As the world shifts away from fossil fuels, solar farms are a crucial part of the solution, providing a sustainable alternative to conveying sources. Many states have ambitious renewable energy goals to combat climate change and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Solar farms play a key role in meeting these targets, contributing to cleaner air and a greener future for everyone. By increasing the overall supply of electricity on the grid, solar farms can help drive down energy prices. The more energy that's available from renewable sources like solar, the less reliance there is on expensive and polluting fossil fuels. This can result in lower electricity costs for consumers. Next slide, please. Community solar. So, what is community solar? Community solar is a program that allows multiple households, businesses, or organizations to share the benefits of a solar power system. Instead of installing solar panels on your property, you can subscribe to a nearby solar farm. You get credits for the energy that the farm generates, just like you would if you had a solar panel on your roof. So you may rent or have too much tree cover or live in a building where it's not feasible to put up panels. That's where community solar would come in. It makes solar energy accessible to everyone, regardless of whether you own your home or where you live. Unlike traditional solar panels installations, community solar doesn't require you to worry about maintenance, installation costs, or repairs. The solar farm company takes care of the the solar farm takes care of maintaining the system, and you receive solar credits, which are applied to your electricity bill. And then more importantly, you're able to participate in the green energy transition. So how does it work? You sign up with a community solar program in your area. You're assigned a share of a nearby solar farm. The solar farm generates energy, and you get credits for energy it produces. These credits are applied to your electric bill. Solar credits are also known as net metering credits. So whether you live in an urban center or a rural town, community solar allows you to harness the power of the sun without the need for rooftop installations. Next slide, please. Okay. The state offers a variety of incentives and policies to make sure solar energy more accessible and cost-effective for homeowners. The SMART, which stands for Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target Program, is a game changer for anyone installing solar panels. It offers financial incentives to reduce upfront costs and make solar energy more affordable. Whether you're installing solar at home or at a business, this program provides cash payments over time, helping to offset the installation cost. A value of energy calculator is available on the program's administrator's website to help interested homeowners calculate their expected incentive payment. Residents who receive electricity service from their municipality are not eligible to participate under SMART and should reach out to the utility company. One of the coolest perks of going solar in Massachusetts is net metering. What does that mean? So if your solar panels produce more electricity than you need, you can send the excessive power back to the grid. In return, you'll get credits to use when you need more power later. It's like getting paid for the solar energy you generated. For example, on a cloudy day or a rainy day, when your panels aren't producing enough energy, the utility grid will feed your energy and count that energy against the credits you banked over time. As a solar customer, you will only billed for your net energy usage, also known as net energy metering or NEM. Net metering is the solar industry's fundamental policy. Next, the Massachusetts Clean Energy, also known as MassCEC, also provides important resources to help with your solar journey. From grants to helpful project information, they're dedicated to support solar projects and fostering clean energy innovation in the states. Lastly, let's talk about solar renewable energy credits, SRECs. These are a great way to earn extra income. Every time your solar system generates a megawatt hour of power, you earn an CREC. You can sell these credits on the market, which provides additional financial rewards for producing clean energy. So whether you're considering going solar or are already reaping the rewards, Massachusetts has a lot of incentives to make it easier and more profitable. These programs from SMART to CRECs are helping residents take control of their energy while supporting the state's transition to renewable energy. Next, Shalita is now going to go over challenges and considerations.
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, I don't mean to only talk about the bad parts of the solar panels, but I'll be talking about some challenges and considerations that you have to think when you are considering panels, the solar panels. And one of them is the upfront cost. As I said before, there are costs related to labor, related to inverters, installation, even the permitting and those things. So it's important to discuss who will be bearing those costs. And also, as Melissa said, and I won't go into it, we have some incentives and rebates in Massachusetts. So even though there might be a lot of costs, you might be able to offset some of them with the rebates, but they are usually not upfront. Usually you will bear those costs, and then later you can take advantage of the rebates. Also, as I said before, weather variability. Um, Solar panels they are highly dependent on weather conditions. And as we are talking about Massachusetts, we have a few months of snow in Massachusetts more than other states. So keep in mind that on cloudy days, snowy days, and days that you have less light, you will have your efficiency reduced. And that could impact on how much you were saving on the solar panels. Um, One thing to keep in mind is that whenever you install them, this is a discussion you have to have, and this is a discussion, and this is something that it will happen. On sunny days, you will be generating more electricity, and it's it's a good practice to take advantage of those sunny days, and then you can source the energy onto for the non too sunny days. Also, we have space constraints. It can be a challenge, and it is something to consider. Um, when we talk about space and constraints, I wanted to talk about a little bit about your roof condition and house structure. Um, there are many houses in Massachusetts who were built before the 950s or in the 90s, and it's good to take in consideration the condition of your house, the structure, the solar panels, the structure of the solar panels. It can be heavy. So if you don't take in consideration that or the condition of the roof before the solar panels are installed, you might end up having costs later to remove the panels and maybe redoing the roof, putting the panels back. That's in contract. That's something that's a clause in contract, but it's always good to clarify before closing the contract. Who will be bearing the cost if I ever need to remove the panels, if I need to change the roof, or if there's any leakings, anything like that, how can we resolve that later? About space and constraints, not all the installations have space enough to bear the solar panels. And nowadays, there are some creative solutions. For example, building facades. So you can install the panels on the building facades or parking lots, over the parking lots, and community solar gardens. Also, some new constructions, they are already taking in consideration that they will have solar panels on it, and they are already integrating the solar panels in the project, in the construction project. Another thing that it's good to keep in mind when installing the solar panels or going solar is the regulation hurdles. So each town has their own regulations and their own rules when it comes to solar panels. And that could end up delaying processes, or that could end up changing some of the aspects or the benefits that you get with the solar. For example, there are some towns that batteries are not allowed. So before considering signing the contract, check with your town, check the regulations. If you can go to the website of the town and check with the clerk of the town and see if there's any regulations, any specific thing, or maybe incentives that you can get when you go solar. That could delay the process, that could make it faster. It's always good to keep yourself informed before signing. And as we are talking about a cold state as Massachusetts, we all want to be warm in the winter. So guess who else wants to be warm in the winter? The rodents. And when they want to get warm in the winter, one place that they might go is your ceiling or it's your roof. And if you have the solar panels installed on the roof, it might be that they can go under it and you might not see because it's going to be covered. So it's always good to check for holes or for any activity when something or noises, because when the rodents go in, they might shoot the wires or they might shoot the installation, and that could cause a leak on your installation. So checking that, it's a pretty good way to prevent that. But an even better way to prevent that is having a critter guard. this is also something that you can talk to the seller representative. It might be included in your solar plan and you don't know. The Critter Guard, they provide a protection around the solar panels. So no rodents will get inside. They can't shoot through the guards. And it's I would say the best way to prevent from having a leak or having your wires chewed by a rodent. And with that, I will pass to Terry.
Thank you, Talita. So I'm going to talk about consumer protections as they relate to what we see with solar contracts in Massachusetts, and specifically complaints that we receive about them in Consumer Advocacy and Response Division. Consumer protections in Massachusetts are quite strong as far as the law and regulations go. But I do want to emphasize that it's much better for consumers to avoid having to invoke the law. Now, if you get into trouble, the laws and regulations are strong, but it's better to avoid these situations if you can in the first place. We'll talk about that a little more momentarily. In Massachusetts, Consumer Protection Act prohibits unfair and deceptive business practices, and Home Improvement Contractor Act regulates home improvement contractors. If you're having a solar system installed on your home, that's a home improvement project that is subject to Home Improvement Contractor Act. Regulations under Consumer Protection Act prohibit deception in door-to-door sales. And they also require disclosures. So businesses are required to tell you everything you need to know to make an informed decision as to whether or not to buy a product or service. And they are prohibited from making misrepresentations. Massachusetts general laws also provide consumers a 3-day right to cancel door-to-door sales agreements. That's any contract a consumer enters into away from the usual place of business for the seller. If you should enroll in something and then immediately regret it, or enroll in something just to get a salesperson to leave your home, you have a 3-day right to cancel. The way to do that is to send a certified letter to the company and make sure that it reaches them before the end of the 3-day period. And get your certified return receipt on your letter, notifying them of cancellation. If it doesn't reach them within the 3 days, it'll be much more difficult to assert your right to that cancellation. The law also requires door-to-door salespersons to be licensed. And local cities and towns can be part of that regulatory environment by they may have additional requirements. So you can check with your city or town to see what's required. With regard to licensing and registration for solar installers, Home Improvement Contractor Act um, uh, uh, says that solar installers have to have a construction supervisor's license. The law also requires any electrical work that's done to be performed by a licensed electrician. And Office of Consumer Affairs requires home improvement contractors to register with the Office of Consumer Affairs. Now, Consumer Affairs also administers an arbitration program and Home Improvement Guarantee Fund. And they are both ways that you could get help or possibly relief if you get into trouble with a solar contract. Our office offers what we do in Consumer Advocacy and Response Division, which is, we call it Consumer Assistance Services. It's free, and it's a voluntary resolution process. So we are mostly not attorneys, but you could file a complaint, and if we can help, then we may be able to contact the company and advocate on your behalf. But since we're not attorneys and it's a voluntary resolution process, we would not be able to compel them to do anything. We can only request. Like I said, protections are strong, but it would be better to avoid needing them. So next slide, please. We think that if many of the complaints that we receive about these kinds of contracts, the situation got started with a door-to-door salesperson. So we hear time and again that someone knocked on the door and they made promises that may or may not have been too good to be true. And the consumer was persuaded by the salesperson signed with their finger on the salesperson's tablet or a phone or something like that. Only to find out after that they were entering into a contract that's going to be 20 or 25 years long, and it's expensive, and they regret it. And then after the fact, the consumer did their online research and found that there were hundreds or thousands of complaints against that particular company. So we're recommending that if there's a knock at your door, that you don't open it. And instead, if you want to talk to the person, talk through the door. Don't give them any of your personal information, such as your email address or phone number. If you may be interested in the product, ask them to leave their information at your door. This will do two things. First of all, it'll deny them any opportunity to make representations to you that may or may not be true. Secondly, it'll allow you to do your online research to search for company news information and reviews at your leisure. That's information that you want to get for yourself before signing any agreement. Lastly, we hear a lot from consumers that they are surprised that when they did that type of signing on tablet or phone at the door with their finger, they're shocked to learn that they signed a 15-page contract that is loaded with fine print. I definitely recommend don't open the door. Get the information, do your research first. And then if you want to proceed, read all the pages carefully before signing any agreement. These are often 20, 25-year contracts. And, don't be one of those people that calls our office and reports that, the contract was too long, so I didn't read it. So these things will help you stay clear of trouble and hopefully allow you to not have to invoke the protection of the law. Next slide, please. So we wanted you to have some resources for information, and we'll make these things available to you. Definitely make note of Office of Consumer Affairs. They do administer an arbitration program for home improvement contracts and Home Improvement Guarantee Fund. Now, Home Improvement Guarantee Fund allows consumers to recover some money in the event that they've gotten a judgment against a contractor and the contractor failed to pay it. So that's a really important resource to make note of. Otherwise, all this is helpful information. Next slide, please. Finally, if you meet with unfair, deceptive trade practice, or if you have a question about any consumer issue, our office has a hotline for that. The number's on the screen there. And of course, if you meet with any unfair or deceptive trade practices, we want to know. So you're encouraged to file a consumer complaint, and we may be able to help. Thank you. And I will pass it back to Melissa.
Oh, thank you, Terry. I think what we were going to do is we can open it up for questions. Emu stated that we will be emailing you with the questions and answers. I do see a question: should homeowners who purchase solar panels modify their homeowners insurance policy? Solar companies have their own insurance usually. The homeowner insurance don't usually cover anything related to that before the solar insurance kick in. Is there any other questions or comments? Sherry, there's a question for you. Terry, how to deal with offers offered at superstores such as Costco or BJ's?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I definitely recommend being wary. Now, we've heard a lot in the competitive electric supply industry about representatives approaching consumers and offering them incentives such as gift cards to get them to enroll. Now, understand that by the time something reaches me, I mean, it's a complaint. No one is contacting me because they're happy. So that does skew my viewpoint a little bit on these things. But we hear a lot about consumers simply not being made aware what they were actually agreeing to when they accept offers from these kinds of people. So again, I say just be very wary. Make sure that you understand the transaction fully, and you know, I would be hesitant to accept an offer from a merchant who has set up a table in a store.
Thank you, Terry. Looks like we have another question. Can the cost of replacing your roof be included in the cost of the system claimed for federal tax credit?
I think I could answer that. Just before, on the same note that Terry was saying about Costco, my mom used to say, if you don't thinking about something when you go to the grocery store, and then you get there and you're like, I want to buy this. Maybe you shouldn't buy in the first place. If you're not thinking or planning already about buying that, why would you enter in an agreement in like for 25 years without thinking about that? So it's always good to say, think very carefully about that before taking a decision. And on the cost of replacing a roof being, what was the question? Was it the cost of the roof being included in the tax credit? We are not tax advisors here, so it's pretty hard for us to answer that because that could vary from person to person and from you know, your perspective or what your tax advisor would tell you. So it's a pretty hard question to answer, and I would advise you 100% checking with someone who makes your taxes before doing that or before thinking about that.
Thank you so much, Talita. We also have one more question from John on net metering. What's the difference between what you pay for electricity versus what the electricity pays you for the electricity your solar produces? And of course, there may be some questions that we might probably need to look into further and do some research before following up, but we could also include some of these responses in our follow-up email right after this presentation. So please, I encourage everyone to continue adding their questions in the chat. If we don't get to it throughout the presentation, we'll definitely follow up via email.
I can try to answer that question about the net metering costs. I'm Benny Mishulam with the AG's office. I think the answer is actually it depends. There are a number of people who live in municipal light districts, right? So you don't live, you know, in either Eversource grid or Unitil service territory, and net metering might actually work differently there. I think that the what's called avoided cost rate is actually lower there. The incentives are sometimes not as generous. So I think you really need to go over that in detail with whoever you're contracting with.
Thank you so much, Benny. And we have another question. Who is ultimately responsible for ensuring the investor is operational? Inverter, I meant to say.
That also depends. In situations where the system is leased or there's a PPA, that's equipment that's going to be the responsibility of the owner. If the consumer has purchased a system, that would be their responsibility, but there may be warranty coverage, and you know that's all. It's all going to be in the contracts.
Thank you so much, Terry. And I think we've already gotten a few of this question, whether we would have, you guys will all have access to the slides. Yes, you will have access to the slides, and we'll also make sure that any of the questions we couldn't go through throughout the presentation, we'll also include those as a follow-up email as well. So again, please feel free to access a few more questions. Now we still have about 4 minutes, or if anything comes up after the presentation, obviously you can always feel free to follow up with us via email again. Just want to take the time to sincerely thank our presenters, the solar team. You guys are amazing. I've learned a lot on the call, and now I'm definitely considering solar, when I do find a home. So thank you all so much for being on the call and those who jumped in to answer questions. And of course, yes, all of these resources, including our contacts, name of presenters, will be shared with you all as well. And we still have a few minutes, so we're still here. All yours. So Sima, I think your question is, how do we access other trainings, pilot consumer trainings? Great question. So again, my name is Umu, and I'm from the consumer, I'm jumping into the consumer advocacy division already. I'm from the community engagement division, and in collaboration with consumer advocacy and response division and other divisions across the office, we collaborate on a variety of different presentations covering different topics. And again, we will provide a link to where you can actually access a form where you could submit any of the presentations, any of the topics that you're interested in, and we can send you a list of topics that we cover as well. So this is a really great question. We would love to present to you all again in a different space, different setting, and different topics. And it looks like we have one last question we'll just take if the team does not mind. What happens when the company you'd contracted with filed Chapter 11 before all the panels were installed and now won't do anything?
Well, Chapter 11 usually is a reorganization of the company. Sometimes it involves the sale of the assets. Any new company owner may take responsibility. But either way, a bankruptcy proceeding is handled by the bankruptcy court. So the thing to do is keep track of what's going on there. And in that case, if you have a loss because the project isn't finished, I would definitely reach out to Office of Consumer Affairs and inquire with them as to whether Home Improvement Guarantee Fund may be of help to you.
Thank you so much, Terry. I believe we have about a minute. We did perfect on timing. Thank you again, team. Cannot thank the Consumer Advocacy and Response Division enough for sharing this very important resources with all of us. And thank you all again for being on the call. Thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat. We get a sense of where you are all from. So thank you again. Again, we will follow up via email, and if any questions come up between now and then, please do not hesitate to contact us. We are here for you all the time. Thank you again, and until next time. Take care, everyone.